Hello and welcome, my friends and viewers, to this week's episode of Legendlore, where I draw and talk about monsters, characters, gods, and other things from D&D 5th edition, all while giving a small but quickly digestible history about them. Together we'll go over their history within the game, how they're utilized in the modern edition, and how you guys can utilize them in your own games. For this video, we will be covering Clerics, a class full of flavor and roleplay potential, while also often being the one that is responsible for the survival of the party. Getting right into it, Clerics have a 1d8 hit dice, have proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saving throws, and can wear light and medium armor while wielding shields and simple weapons. They can also choose to be proficient in two of the following skills, being History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. Starting at first level, Clerics gain access to spellcasting and choose their Divine Domain, being one of the few classes that can choose their subclass at level 1. Spellcasting allows Clerics to cast cantrips and leveled spells using their Wisdom, gaining access to a new spell level every 2 levels, with their spell attack bonus being their proficiency bonus plus their Wisdom modifier, and their spell save DC being the same number plus 8. For their Divine Domain, this subclass informs the powers granted to the Cleric by their chosen god or source of power, as well as their aesthetic, worldview, values, and roleplay parameters. The different subclasses include the Arcana, Death, Forge, Grave, Knowledge, Life, Light, Nature, Order, Peace, Tempest, Trickery, Twilight, and War domains. And you also gain a new feature from your chosen domain at levels 2, 6, 8, and 17. At level 2, you gain access to Channel Divinity, which is the key ability provided to them that can be used in a number of 3 different ways, one of which being based off of their chosen domain. The first 2 are known as Turn Undead and Harness Divine Power. Turn Undead allows you to use your Channel Divinity to cast a ward that targets all undead that you can see within a 30-foot radius as an action. Those undead that are targeted must make a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, and if they fail, they are forced to spend all of its concurrent turns getting as far away from you as possible, lasting up to 1 minute or until they suffer any form of damage. Furthermore, the affected undead cannot use reactions and must use this action to dash, regardless of whether or not it would incur an attack of opportunity, and if the creature cannot move further away from you, such as being trapped behind a wall, corner, or a spell such as Wall of Stone, they can then only use their action to dodge to lessen the chance of being hit. This is overall excellent for when you're dealing with massive hordes of undead at any level, and is good for cutting out some undead from initiative and giving your party a chance to take them down at separate intervals, rather than having to deal with all of them at once. Harness Divine Power allows you to use your Channel Divinity to regain 1 expended spell slot, doing so as a bonus action, the maximum level of that spell slot being equal to your proficiency bonus. It's a very simple and useful alternative way to use your Channel Divinity should you not be particularly focused on fighting undead, and it's particularly good to have on long dungeon crawls or in preparation for a difficult combat. And lastly, you gain a specific Channel Divinity ability from your chosen Divine Domain. At level 2, you can use your Channel Divinity once per short rest, and you gain an additional use of it at levels 6 and 3 for a maximum total of 3 times per short rest. At level 4, like all classes, Clerics gain an ability score increase, meaning that they can either increase one of their ability scores by 2 or 2 ability scores by 1. Alternatively, you can choose a feat if your DM allows feats in their game, which adds both customization and versatility to your character, both mechanics and flavor-wise. We will go over which fates are often the best to get the most out of your class features, and you gain an additional ability score increase or feat at levels 8, 12, 6, and 19 for a total of 5. At level 4, you also gain access to the Cantrip Versatility optional feature, should the DM allow it to be used in their games, which allows you to replace one cantrip you learned from this class's spellcasting feature with another cantrip, so long as it's from the Cleric spell list. Next, at level 5, Clerics get Destroy Undead, which empowers the Turn Undead ability against undead of a challenge rating of 1/2 or lower. When an undead of challenge rating 1/2 or lower fails its saving throw against Turn Undead, the creature is instantly destroyed instead of turned. The challenge rating for which undead this ability can affect increases to CR1 at level 8, CR2 at level 11, CR3 at level 14, and finally CR4 at level 17. For context, this ability allows you to annihilate entire hordes of low-level undead like zombies and skeletons, and have the chance to destroy more dangerous undead such as banshees, shadows, bone nagas, deathlocks, and flame skulls, all of which are at or below a challenge rating 4. From here on, it's mostly spellcasting up until you hit about level 10, at which point you get access to the Divine Intervention ability, which allows you to call upon your deity to provide aid in certain times of need. Divine Intervention takes an action to activate, and you must roll a percentile die or a d100. If you roll a number that is equal to or lower than your Cleric level, your god does intervene, at which point the Dungeon Master chooses which way the god makes their presence known. It is recommended that you use a Cleric spell or domain ability as a base example, but this is one of those class abilities that is very Dungeon Master dependent. dependent. You can either go very thematic with it, such as a giant fist punching a dragon out of the air, cue Critical Role, or you could keep a more balanced approach with a simple use of powerful spells, which can prevent divine interventions from becoming get-out-of-jail-free cards, combat or situation-wise. If the divine intervention is successful, you cannot use the ability again for 1 week, but if it is unsuccessful, you can attempt again after a long rest. And lastly, upon reaching 20th level, your call for intervention succeeds automatically with no roll required on your part. How game-breaking this can be is really up to the Dungeon Master, but I imagine certain gods would be angered at being pestered to continuously intervene, especially with the powers they've already given their clerics. In terms of the Cleric Divine Domain subclasses, they help inform you on which gods you may worship, the tenets you follow, and the sort of power that your deity channels through you. Most gods have multiple domains under their belt, which means that they can choose different clerics in different clerical orders to embody different aspects. Cleric is also one of the classes that has the most subclasses to choose from, which offers a great variety of customization and choice. Ironically, it also makes it one of the best classes to have 2 of or more in a party, as there's enough variety for them to be distinct, and who's going to say no to more healing? First off, Arcana clerics study magic and revere the arcane as a source of worship, most similar to wizards in their ability to select spells from the wizard spell list and break apart the spells of their enemies. Gods of this domain include Mystra, Corlin, and Nier from the Forgotten Realms. Death clerics are focused on the cause and state of death, as well as the forces and energies that allow the undead to rise and necromancy to exist. They're capable of increasing their necrotic damage output higher than clerics of other domains, and gods of the death domain include Mirkul, Vecna, and even the demon lord of undeath, Orcus. Forge domain clerics are concerned with the forge, fire, hearth, and home, and the immense care and patience that goes into the craft. They can wear heavier armor, wield martial weaponry, and become resistant to fire damage, and the gods of the forge include Moradin, Riorix from Dragonlance, and God. The Grave domain, which is separate from the Death domain, is focused on the reinforcement of the natural order of life and afterlife, watching over and guiding the moment of death to suit the needs of them and their loved ones. Grave clerics can increase the damage output of their allies, reduce critical hits back to normal hits, and can sense the presence of undead naturally. This is among the strongest cleric subclasses in the game, and gods who hold the Grave domain include the Raven Queen, Kelemvor, and even Therisden, the Chained Oblivion. Knowledge clerics focus on the acclimation, protection, and curation of knowledge and skill, granting bonuses to their skill checks, reading the thoughts of other people, and allowing them to change their skill proficiencies depending on the situation. Gods of knowledge include Ayun, Trigal, and Wukin. Life clerics are your more traditional healing-focused clerics, beholden to the fostering of life, curing of disease, and cleansing of infectious and deadly forces. They can increase the healing that their spells do, as well as heal others from their own personal pool through channel divinity, and gods of the life domain include Soon, Helm, and Ilmater. Light clerics deal in various aspects of light, be it the education of the ignorant, the literal illumination of dark forces, or the righteous cleansing of demonic machinations from the material realm and its denizens. Clerics of this domain can impose disadvantage on enemy attack rolls and deal passive radiant damage, and some example gods of this domain would include Pelor, Lathander, and the fire god Kozuth. Nature clerics are very much a does-what-it-says on the tin kind of cleric, wielding power similar to druids in that they take from their spell list, charm both animals and plants with their divine power, and grant resistance against elemental damage types. Gods of nature include deities such as Melora, Sylvanas, and Malar. Next, the domain of order focuses on the governance or control of people and the enforcement of laws, codes, oaths, deals, and promises, allowing order clerics to enforce their own will upon others. They can grant their allies additional attacks, have greater command over enchantment magic, and can wear heavy armor. And gods of order consist of deities such as Tyr, Tiamat, and Bahamut. Peace clerics focus on diplomacy, friendship, and the avoidance of war and conflict through determination and camaraderie. They can grant their allies passive healing, teleport them to avoid damage, and grant them resistance whilst maneuvering them with that teleportation, making them another one of the stronger subclasses in the game. Gods of peace include Eldath, Rao, and Paladin. Tempest clerics worship gods of the storm, air, and sea, using their abilities to deal powerful lightning damage and eventually gain a fly speed. Tempest clerics often worship gods such as Kord, Oril, and Talos. The Trickery domain, like the Order domain, has many uses that can serve both good and evil, focusing on fooling others with illusions and evading the consequences of their actions. Trickery clerics worship gods such as Asmodeus, Loth, and the Luck Maidens Bishaba and Tamora. The Twilight domain, another one of the stronger cleric subclasses, is concerned with the border between light and dark, just as how the Grave domain is concerned with the border of life and death. One can serve the light side and guard against nocturnal horrors, while the other can seek to command and rein these creatures in to serve them. Celestian, Saloon, and Shar are all good examples of gods with the Twilight domain. And finally, we have the War Domain Cleric, which is one that is just as classic as the Life Cleric, reveling in battle and praying that their god bestows upon them the strength to defeat their enemies. They can grant themselves and their allies ridiculous bonuses to hit, and eventually become resistant to all forms of non-magical physical attacks. Gods of War include Bane, Grumsh, and Tempest, whom we've covered in a previous video. Between all these subclasses, it's very easy to come up with a number of interesting character concepts for your cleric. So when building the character, here are a couple of things that I recommend you keep in mind. Why does your cleric worship a god, and what made them choose that specific deity? Did that god smile down upon them in a time of need, and so they've devoted themselves as repayment? Or does the god's teachings and tenets actually fall in line with the character's own? Why did your cleric's god bestow upon them the domain that they currently hold? Remember, just because we choose the domain for our PC doesn't mean that they necessarily choose the domain for themselves. The deity will often pick what kind of powers their faithful can wield, which means that your character has to have something that deems them worthy to hold these powers. Maybe your knowledge cleric is naturally inquisitive and their deity wishes to help them in their quest of curiosity. Or perhaps an order cleric has some good ideas of legislator and politics, but is very soft-spoken and often ignored at court. The god could step in and give them a bit more of a convincing demeanor, or a more powerful voice that commands attention. And lastly, what goal does your god wish to accomplish through the use of their faithful clergy? Clerics and other members of these divine orders are the foot soldiers and operators of the will of the divine, as it were, and as such they will put them to work in accomplishing their wants and desires. It could be as simple as spreading the gospel and recruiting new members, or as focused as discovering a very specific magic item in a very specific ruined temple deep beneath the earth. Each god has a different domain of influence, and as such, a different set of plans underway, so think about how your cleric can aid in the success of that plan. All this should be discussed with your dungeon master, as only they really know what gods are both present and not present within their game world. You don't want to show up to a table set in the Forgotten Realms with a cleric who worships the gods of Dragonlance, so be sure to work with your DM on how the cleric fits into the campaign story and the world as a whole to avoid the risk of misalignment. Going a little deeper into character creation, here are a couple of base character concepts to help you get the ball rolling when creating a cleric PC or NPC. First, we have the Doorstep Acolyte, a very simple character with a very simple backstory, having been left at the doorstep of a monastery or temple as a baby, and thus has been taken in and raised by the church under the tutelage of your chosen god. This is a common origin for clerics of good or lawful aligned gods like Pelor and Ilmater, and it is very easy to implement, allowing you to sort of skip all the philosophical and moral questions that come with choosing a god as a fully developed adult. Perhaps your cleric worships his god because it's all they know, having never gotten a chance to explore the world beyond their church gates save for the new adventure that they're going on. Maybe this adventure and their experiences during it will cause them to question their deity, or further reinforce their faith in them. Only time, roleplay, and rolling dice will tell. Next, we have the Saved Faithful, the cleric who, before they were a member of the clergy, called upon the aid of the universe during some harsh time in their life, and received an answer from a deity. This experience shook their whole perception of the world at large, and thus they devoted themselves to the worship and reverence of said entity in repayment for their help. A couple of examples of this sort of event can include the goddess of merchants and trade, Wukeen, saving a penniless merchant from financial ruin, or Pelor answering a father's prayer to cure their sick child. These clerics are defined by the direct experience that they had with this god, and this experience has left them with an unshakable devotion and reverence for this deity, willing to do sometimes terrible things in the name of repayment and reverence. Evil gods save people from destruction all the time, such as Bane building his faithful from soldiers facing death, or Therisden adopting the lost, showing them the truth of madness and freeing them from the perceived chains of logic and reality. And lastly, we have one of the more complicated concepts in the willing participant, a cleric who is the type of person that would be doing what they are doing with or without the help of the god they serve. It just happens that their morals, wants, and goals align for the moment, and so the god imbues them with enough power to get the job done. These are your deadly assassins who worship Baal, your druidic herbalists who worship Melora, and your wizard students who revere gods like Mystra and Azuth alongside their independent study. These people can either view their relationship with the deity as a partnership, or a mere meeting of the minds that can easily be ended as fast as it began. The important thing for these cleric characters is that they believe that they stand on the same footing as the god they worship, following a mutual understanding that they work better together rather than separate. These clerics talk of deities more like friends or compatriots or even business partners, rather than someone to be beholden to or idolize. I find this cleric to be the most interesting to play due to the fact that atheism is a bit hard to depict in a D&D fantasy world, mainly in its normal definition. An atheist in such a world wouldn't believe that the gods don't exist, as their presence has been proven time and time again. Rather, they would believe that the gods are not worthy of worship for some reason or the other. This is to say that these clerics sort of toe the line between believer and non-believer. With all that out of the way, let's talk about feats. Now, when selecting feats for your cleric, these are a couple that I would suggest that have great synergy with your class abilities and resource management. First off, Alert and Mobile are great feats to build up combat maneuverability and initiative bonuses, especially for clerics of the Forge or War domain. This can allow you to be able to cast and get your spells off faster in turn order, as well as turn the fight closer into your favor right out the gate. Also, as I've said previously, melee spell attacks count for the purposes of gaining Mobile's immunity to attacks of opportunity from enemies you attack. So just be sure to keep that in mind. Heavy Armor Master is excellent for those domains that allow you access to heavy armor, such as the War, Life, and Order domains. Meta Magic Adept can offer some more versatility for your cleric spells, including the ones that target your allies rather than just your enemies. Eldritch Adept can also add more mechanical versatility and add some flavor to your cleric through the invocations, while Elemental Adept specifically benefits the Elemental 1 damage type cleric, such as the Tempest or even the Forge cleric. Fey Touch and Shadow Touch both add additional single-use spells that free up your own spell selection, while also reinforcing the flavor of your character's chosen domain. Fey Touched for Arcana or Trickery clerics can inform your power's origin, and Shadow Touched for Twilight or Death clerics just makes for good flavor. The gifts of the Gem, Chromatic, and Metallic Dragon each benefit the cleric in a variety of different ways beyond just the Wisdom bonus. The Metallic Dragon's healing and reactionary AC bonus is great to build upon the cleric's focus on party support, and the Gem Dragon's Telekinesis is great for enemy positioning and battlefield control. Meanwhile, the Chromatic Dragon's reactive resistance helps with staying power and tanking potential, especially if built upon the various ways that damage resistance works for the War, Forge, and Grave domains. Warcaster and Spell Sniper are both essential feats for any spellcaster, granting hefty range bonuses and use of spells instead of attacks of opportunity. And lastly, Telekinetic and Telepathic are good feats to use for social encounters and dungeon maneuverability respectively, as well as conveying the deities' imposing of their will upon the world. Now, before we get to our homebrew magic item this evening, here are a couple that would serve as great rewards for cleric PCs or as tools for cleric NPCs to have during combat. Most of them focus on empowering your spellcasting or dealing with undead forces, and you can find them at each of these different pages in each of these different books listed. And finally, for our homebrew magic item this evening, we have the God Brand, a special ring that requires attunement by a cleric and grants the wielder a +2 bonus to their wisdom score so long as they remain attuned. Also, upon attunement to this item, your cleric may then choose an additional domain that their god has under their portfolio, at which point they gain use of that domain's first and second level subclass abilities. This does not give your cleric additional uses of Channel Divinity, but rather gives them a bit of variety in different ways to use it, now being able to select from a wider pool instead of just the Harness Power, Domain Channel Divinity, and Turn Undead. And lastly, the challenge rating of undead that can be destroyed by the cleric's Destroy Undead feature increases by half the cleric's proficiency bonus rounded down. What this means is that the maximum challenge rating of undead that the ability can affect is 7 upon gaining a +6 proficiency bonus. This is a very simple item that adds a little bit of versatility and also calls upon the ability to choose 2 domains, a little callback to the first edition of Pathfinder. It also allows you to be able to take on stronger undead once the levels begin to pile up. I've included the item stack block in the description below. That's the class of Cleric, everybody. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and press the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. If you guys want a chance to vote on the subject of future videos, please check the link in the description, and also tell me about your Cleric characters, what kind of gods you guys decided to worship. And also, let me know what kind of stuff you guys would like to see in future videos. But until then, happy holidays, and I'll see you guys next time.